Julie Girling, Conservative MEP for the South West. The European Parliament here in Strasbourg has been discussing flooding. You raised the recent flooding in Cornwall, but you also said perhaps more could be done at a European level. What exactly were you saying?
Well, I was talking about help, really. We've got, today we voted on a Solidarity Fund award to Ireland for flooding that took place a year ago. And now, that's one issue about compensating and trying to help infrastructure rebuild. But what I was talking about really was my experience back in Gloucestershire in 2007. And again, we've had, only in the last week in the southwest, appalling floods in Cornwall, people losing their homes, roads being cut off, fields being completely flooded, the knock-on effect to agriculture and business. It's happening again and again and again. So the point I was making was that there are lots of things we can learn from other parts of Europe. This for us in the UK is a relatively new phenomenon, not flooding, we've always had it, but the fact that so much rain is falling in such a short period and concentrated period of time on certain parts of the landscape and in river basins. So when in Gloucestershire we had a bit of a tie-up with the Austrian region of Carinthia, where they have a huge amount of experience because they've always had the flood melt. So they are very used to, in parts of Europe that have mountains with snow, getting a huge melt and then fantastic cascades of water. So they have to do their drainage in a different way. They have to do their field management in a different way. A lot of this is about land management. It's not about huge infrastructure changes. It's not about building huge reservoirs. It's just a little bit about ditches. And we've had in Europe in the last decade increasing pressure on our farmers to farm environmentally, and some of the traditional jobs, the things like the ditch digging, have been discouraged. But we need to start thinking about, no, hang on, that wasn't a terribly good idea. We need those ditches. And people like the Austrians have a huge amount to teach us. So my point really was, we're talking about funding possibly through Europe, early warning weather systems, but I think that sort of thing is done pretty well in member states already. Any local authority that's not got an early warning system on the weather is actually not doing their job very well, and I'm very confident that they do it well. But what they really would benefit from would be the advice and expertise from some of the parts of Europe that have been dealing with these issues for millennia probably. You've probably somewhere in Italy there is a Roman ditch doing exactly what we think we should be doing now in the UK. So I was just calling for the Commission to have a look at setting up a programme of mutual assistance, mutual aid in terms of planning for the future, because with weather changes there is no hope, no real expectation that this is going to stop happening.
What is it that you think you would like to see? What do you think could work? Is it some kind of network? Would it be on an ad hoc basis? What kind of thing do you think could actually make a real impact?
Well, I think some real funding through the regional cooperation programme, which would be saying, okay, in the southwest, where we do have a particular rainfall problem, I think everybody watching this will know, we could be tying up with areas that have a similar, for example, Andalusia. Now, we don't think of that as being wet, but they have floods virtually every year because they don't have a lot of rain across the year, but they have it all in a concentrated period. So if we were able to set up a network and we were able to have, I'm not talking about just sending people off for nice conferences. I'm talking about getting engineers together. I'm talking about getting the people who build the roads to talk to each other. Yeah, I'm talking about the people who map out land use to talk to each other so that we can pass on good practice.
That was the next question really. Who would do the networking? You're saying experts really rather than perhaps politicians. Who would you like to see networking?
I think it's the experts. I think it's the people who deal with it day in and day out. And I'm very aware that in 2007 in Gloucestershire we learned so much as a local authority when I was involved in it from the flooding, which we then were under huge demand to go and talk to other local authorities at conferences. The Gloucestershire County Council engineer was going down to other counties and talking it through. Our fire chief was talking about emergency response. There was a lot of learning across the UK as a result of that. I just think it's a question of extending that network and getting more information and more help from a wider variety of people. And that's where the European dimension adds value. Just having another talking shop really wouldn't add value, but having people who have real expertise on the ground could really help.
And are there particular parts of your region, the southwest, that spring to mind that you're particularly concerned about when it comes to these kind of flash floods, really?
Well, Cornwall is really the obvious one, because they've really suffered. We had the most appalling floods at Boscastle, and I know government spent a lot of money on a defence system there. But I've been to Boscastle since then, and people are still worried. There's dreadful events last week where you're talking about a lot of water going down into small valleys, using roads as rivers almost, running away the road, those sorts of areas. But of course, if you look at the southwest, that could be anywhere. That could be anywhere. Certainly where I live in the Cotswolds, we suffered badly. But I also, I was involved in a flood in Somerset in 2008. I lost my car, was written off as a result of it, and that was a flash flood after the Bath and West show. So it can happen anywhere in the southwest. I think for the southwest it's a big issue, and it's one that we really need to take forward.
And what did happen to you in the incident that wrote off your car?
Well, that was really a day of very heavy rain. It started mid-afternoon. By the time the show finished, it was virtually impossible to get out of it. Anyone who was there will remember. Eventually get onto the A37, which the police closed, so had to take a minor road. Saw there was a dip in the road with what looked like a puddle. Decided to drive through it. Just as I drove through, there's a gate on the side. It opened with the mud coming down the hill, and it flew into the car and tipped it up. And it was, it was just in absolutely the wrong place at the wrong time. But luckily no one was harmed. But the car, we never saw the car again, unfortunately. It went off on the back of a low loader, and that was the end. But that's, you'll talk to endless people in the southwest that sort of things happen to, and it's increasing frequency. Really, that's the issue. We've really got to get to grips with it. I think it's really pushing belief to think that it's going to stop. It's going to keep going. So we have to deal with it now.